The transport ship slowly moved through a dark red sky. Below it, the planet looked dangerous and silent. Thick clouds covered the land. Lightning flashed again and again, lighting up a world of mud, water, and broken ground. Inside the ship, a group of alien cadets stood in a line. They wore advanced suits and carried high-tech tools. Some looked excited. Others looked nervous. At the end of the line stood one human. He had no special suit, no tools, just simple clothes and calm eyes. The ship landed with a loud sound. The door opened, and cold wind rushed inside. Heavy rain hit the metal floor. "Welcome to your final survival test," the alien instructor said in a cold voice. The cadets stepped out onto the wet ground. Their boots sank slightly into the mud. "This planet will test your intelligence, your strength, and your ability to survive," the instructor continued. Each cadet received a set of advanced tools, energy cutters, auto-build kits, and smart materials that could form shelters in seconds. Then the instructor stopped in front of the human. "You," he said, looking down at him, "you will use nothing." Some cadets laughed quietly. "No tools?" one of them whispered. "He will not last an hour." The human said nothing. The instructor raised his hand. "Your test begins now." Suddenly, the storm became stronger. Rain poured down harder than before. The ground started to shift under their feet. Water flowed quickly, turning the land into deep, sticky mud. The cadets quickly activated their tools. Blue lights flashed. Machines started working. But something was wrong. One tool sparked and shut down. Another flickered and stopped responding. "What is happening?" a cadet shouted. "My system is failing." The storm grew louder. Thunder shook the sky. Panic began to spread. The cadets tried to build shelters, but their machines were not working properly. Structures formed halfway, then collapsed into the mud. In the middle of the chaos, the human quietly walked away. No one stopped him. No one cared. He moved toward a slightly higher area, where the ground looked more stable. He knelt down and touched the mud with his hands. He pressed it, tested it, felt its weight and texture. Then slowly he began to dig. Rain hit his back. Wind pushed against him. But he did not stop. Far behind him, the cadets continued to panic. One of them looked up and noticed the human in the distance. "What is he doing?" he asked in confusion. The human did not look back. He simply kept working. As the storm grew even stronger, the storm did not slow down. It became worse. Rain fell like heavy stones, hitting the ground again and again. The wind howled across the open land, pushing mud and water in every direction. The red sky flashed with bright lightning, and thunder shook the air. The alien cadets were now in trouble. Their advanced tools, which were supposed to help them survive, were failing one by one. "My builder unit is not responding," one cadet shouted. "My energy cutter is dead," another yelled. Sparks came out of a device, then it went dark. A half-built wall suddenly broke apart and melted back into the mud. "This is impossible," a tall cadet said angrily. "Our technology is designed for extreme worlds." But this planet did not care. Water filled every small hole. The ground moved under their feet. Nothing stayed in place. The cadets tried to fix their tools. They pressed buttons again and again. They reset systems. They argued loudly. "You broke it." "No, you did. Move back. You're making it worse." Their voices were full of panic. Another shelter collapsed with a loud crash. Mud splashed everywhere. One cadet slipped and fell, covered from head to toe. Fear was growing. For the first time, they were not in control. Far from them, the human was still working. He had found a small raised area, just a little higher than the rest of the ground. Water flowed around it instead of over it. He sat quietly in the rain, his hands deep in the mud. He picked up a handful, pressed it, then dropped it. Too wet. He tried again from another spot. This time, he mixed the mud with small dry pieces of soil and tiny roots. He pressed it harder, stronger. He nodded slightly. Slowly, he began to shape it. Not randomly, not quickly, carefully. Every movement had a purpose. He formed a thick base, pressing layer after layer into the ground. His hands moved with control, even as the rain tried to wash everything away. He did not rush. He did not panic. Back with the cadets, things were getting worse. "We need a plan," one of them shouted. "We already had a plan," another replied. The tools were the plan. A loud crack of thunder filled the sky. For a moment, everything went silent. Then one cadet turned his head. Through the heavy rain, he saw something strange. The human, still working, still calm, still building something with nothing. The cadet narrowed his eyes. What is he doing now? No one answered, because for the first time, they were starting to wonder if the human knew something they did not. The storm kept raging, but something had changed. The alien cadets were no longer shouting as much. Their voices had grown quieter, filled with confusion instead of anger. Their tools were almost useless now. A few still flickered with weak energy, but nothing worked the way it should. Every time they tried to build, the structures broke apart. Walls melted. Frames sank into the mud. It made no sense to them. Their technology was advanced. It was perfect. So why was it failing? One cadet turned again toward the distance. The human was still there, still working, still alone. "I am going to see what he is doing," the cadet said. "No," another replied quickly. "It is a waste of time." But the first cadet did not listen. Step by step, he moved through the thick mud, struggling to keep his balance. The rain hit his face, making it hard to see. But he kept going. When he got closer, he stopped. His eyes widened. The human was building something stable. A low wall had already formed. It was smooth, thick, and solid. Rain hit it and slowly slid down instead of breaking it apart. "How?" the cadet whispered. The human did not look up. He pressed another layer of mud onto the wall, then smoothed it with his hand. His movements were slow, but exact. He picked up more mud, but this time he mixed it with small sticks and plant fibers. The cadet noticed that. "Why is he doing that?" he asked quietly. The human finally spoke without stopping his work. "It makes it stronger." The cadet frowned. "Stronger? It is just mud." The human shook his head slightly. "Not just mud." He pressed the mixture harder, locking it into place. The wall did not move. The cadet looked closer. He touched the surface carefully. It was firm, not soft, not weak, strong. Behind him, a few more cadets had followed. They watched in silence now. "This is primitive," one of them said. "Yes," another replied. "It should not work." But it was working. The human continued building. He shaped the corners carefully, making sure the base stayed wide and balanced. Then he started forming a curved top. "Why not make it flat?" one cadet asked. The human answered simply, "Water slides off." They looked up. Rain hit the curved surface and flowed down the sides. No damage. No cracks. The cadets tried to copy him. They grabbed mud, pressed it together, and built small shapes. But their versions collapsed quickly. Too loose, too wet, too rushed. They grew frustrated again. "This is not logical," one shouted. The human finally looked at them. "For you, maybe," he said calmly. Then he turned back to his work and kept building. While the storm continued to test them all, only one structure was slowly starting to win. Night came fast on the planet. The red sky turned dark, almost black. Lightning still flashed, but now it only showed quick, sharp images of the broken land. The storm did not stop. It became colder. The wind grew stronger, pushed against everything with force. The alien cadets were exhausted. Their bodies were covered in mud. Their tools were dead. Their shelters, if they could even be called that, were falling apart. One weak structure shook under the wind, then suddenly collapsed. "Move!" a cadet shouted. Too late. Mud and wet material crashed down. The cadet inside barely escaped, crawling out, breathing hard. Another group tried to protect their half-built wall, holding it with their hands. A strong gust of wind hit it. The wall broke instantly. Water rushed in. "This is not a test. This is death," one cadet whispered. Fear was now real. No one argued anymore. No one laughed. Then someone pointed into the darkness. "Look!" Through the rain and wind, something stood still. The human's hut. It was low and curved, almost blending into the ground. The surface was smooth. Rain hit it and flowed away. Wind pushed against it but could not break it. A soft, dim light came from inside. "How is it still standing?" one cadet asked quietly. No one had an answer. Another loud thunder shook the sky. The ground trembled slightly. "We cannot stay here," a cadet said. "We will not survive the night." They all knew it was true. Slowly, carefully, one of them stepped forward. He walked toward the hut. The others followed, unsure, nervous, but desperate. When they reached it, they stopped. The human was sitting near the entrance, still working on small details. He pressed one last layer of mud, sealing a small gap. He looked up. The cadets stood there in silence. Wet, cold, tired. For a moment, no one spoke. Then one cadet finally said, in a low voice, "Can we come inside?" The wind howled loudly behind them. The humans studied their faces. They were no longer proud, no longer confident, just survivors. He looked at the storm, then back at them. Without a word, he moved slightly to the side. That was enough. The cadets quickly entered the hut. Inside, everything felt different. The wind noise became softer. The air was warmer. The ground was dry. They looked around in shock. This is impossible," one of them said. Outside, the storm reached its strongest point. But inside the small mud hut, they were safe. And for the first time since the test began, the alien cadets understood something important. The human was not just surviving. He was winning. Inside the hut, the storm felt far away. The wind still howled outside, and rain still hit the curved roof. But the sound was soft now. The walls did not shake. The structure did not move. The alien cadets sat close together, breathing slowly, trying to calm themselves. For the first time since they landed on the planet, they felt safe. One cadet touched the wall carefully. It was firm and slightly warm. "How is this possible?" he asked quietly. Another looked at the ceiling. "There are no cracks, no weak points." The human sat near the entrance, watching the rain for a moment. Then he turned back toward them. "You built this with your hands?" one cadet asked. "Yes," the human replied simply. "With no tools?" another asked. "Yes." They looked at each other in silence. Their minds struggled to understand it. One cadet spoke again, slower this time. "Our tools are advanced. They are designed for survival. But they failed." The human nodded. "Tools can fail." The cadet frowned. "Then how did you succeed?" The human paused for a moment, then answered, "I listened." "Listened?" the cadet repeated. "To the ground, to the water, to the wind," the human said. "This planet tells you what works, if you pay attention." The cadets stayed quiet, thinking about his words. Another cadet pointed at the wall. "Why does it not break?" The human stood up and placed his hand on the surface. "Because it is balanced," he said. "Not too wet, not too dry." He picked up a small piece of extra material from the floor and showed them. "Mixing mud with roots and fibers makes it stronger. It holds together better." The cadets leaned closer, watching carefully. He continued, "The shape is also important. Flat surfaces break under pressure. Curved surfaces spread the force." They looked up again at the rounded roof. Now it made sense. One cadet lowered his head slightly. "We were trying to fight the planet." The human shook his head. "You should work with it." Silence filled the hut again. But this time it was different. It was not fear. It was understanding. Outside, the storm was still strong, but the hut did not care. Inside, the alien cadets sat quietly, thinking about everything they had done wrong. One of them finally spoke softly. "We thought you were weak." The human looked at him calmly. The cadet continued, "But you knew what to do without anything." The human gave a small nod. No pride, no anger, just truth. And in that quiet moment, the alien cadets realized something they had never understood before. Technology made them powerful, but knowledge made the human unstoppable. Morning came slowly. The storm began to fade. The rain grew lighter, then softer until it finally stopped. The loud wind turned into a quiet breeze. A pale red light spread across the sky. Inside the hut, the alien cadets were still awake. No one had truly slept, but they were alive, and that was enough. The human stood up and stepped outside first. The air felt fresh, but the land was destroyed. Mud covered everything. Deep marks showed where water had rushed through the ground. Broken pieces of alien structures were scattered everywhere. Nothing remained of their shelters. One by one, the cadets walked out of the hut. They looked around in silence. "This was our best effort," one of them said quietly, looking at the ruins. Another shook his head. "And it failed." Then they all turned toward the hut. It stood strong, untouched, perfect, not a single crack. At that moment, a loud sound came from above. The training ship returned. It slowly landed on the damaged ground. The door opened, and the alien instructor stepped out. He looked at the scene carefully. His eyes moved from the destroyed shelters to the standing mud hut. He walked closer. The cadets stood straight, but this time, there was no pride in their posture, only respect. The instructor stopped in front of the hut. He touched the wall, pressed it slightly. It did not move. He walked around it, studying every detail. Then he turned to the cadets. "Explain," he said. No one spoke at first. Finally, one cadet stepped forward. "We failed," he admitted. "Our tools stopped working. Our shelters collapsed." The instructor nodded once. "And this?" He pointed at the hut. The cadet looked at the human. "This is his work," he said. The instructor raised an eyebrow. "With no tools?" "Yes." The instructor turned to the human. For a moment, they looked at each other in silence. Then the instructor spoke slowly and clearly. "Technology can give you power, but it can also make you weak." He turned back to the cadets. "You depended on your tools. When they failed, you failed." His voice became stronger. But he did not depend on anything except understanding. The cadets lowered their heads. They knew it was true. The instructor faced the human again. "You have passed the test," he said. "Without equipment, without support." A short pause. Then he added, "You adapted." The human said nothing, but the message was clear. As the cadets entered the ship, they looked back one last time at the mud hut. They would never forget it, because on that day, they learned something no machine could ever teach them. Humans do not need perfect tools to survive. They only need the ability to learn and adapt. And that made them more dangerous than anyone had ever imagined. Thanks for watching. Subscribe my channel. See you in next video.